Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Our next speaker is Issa Hodge. Issa is a Muslim American activist fighting for the rights of all Americans and the preservation of the Constitution. While organizing the Million American March Against Fear in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, 2013, Issa was on Fox's The Five, Sean Hannity, The Jeanine Pirro Show, and more. Issa has had articles written about him in the Washington Post and the U.S. World News. He is presently the host of an internet radio show, A Muslim and a Catholic Wake Up in America, and has had written articles translated in 32 languages. An expert in strategic messaging, he's orchestrated a successful campaign to show the hypocrisy of U.S. media on its coverage of Muslims and terror attacks. He's a father of 3 boys and owns a family medical clinic in an urban area where they do free health clinics for various churches and rallies in his community. Focusing on communications, community building, religious tolerance workshops, mainstream media outreach by preparing you for an interview, or how to get the mainstream media to air your event, helping with speakers or workshops on speaking, organizing rallies or marches, setting or creating formats for radio programs, and assistance with writing and getting articles to the masses. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Issa Hodge.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. Just one slight correction. That's America, not America. America. So, well, to start with our conversation today, my experience with manipulating mainstream media actually started in the summer of 2012 when I had this idea to attack what I believe to be the start of the problems that we have today. After years of trying to spread truth contrary to the lies mainstream media spreads about Islam, I found that I was spending more time explaining about 9/11 than about Islam. I was tired of me having to explain for the small percentage of nut jobs in my faith while no one else was being made to explain about their nut jobs in their faith. So one day this idea came to me. I was standing in a plaza center and I was talking to an older white gentleman who continued to try to steer the conversation about 9/11. And I kept telling the gentleman politely that, you know, we're not here to talk about 9/11, you know. I don't have anything to say about 9/11 because at this point I'd pretty much tired of that. But eventually I got to the point with his persistence that, you know, I asked him if he could just show me his Ku Klux Klan card. And he said, excuse me. I said, yeah, I'd like to see your Ku Klux Klan card. You're a Christian, you know, roughly 50s, mid-50s, maybe early 60s years old. So you're around that era that the Klan was powerful. So I must assume, since you know that you're a Klan member. And he said, well, that's utterly ridiculous. I said, exactly. Just the same as you are assuming that all Muslims are terrorists. But this actually sprung an idea in my head that in the medical field, when you see the doctor, they don't actually fix the symptoms. They don't treat the symptoms. They treat the origin of the illness, which then eventually gets rid of the symptoms. And what I noticed within activism, that we all do really good jobs, but we're just attacking the symptoms. And what I believe to be the disease was 9/11 that precipitated, you know, Patriot Act, the NDAA, several other things. So I got together with some other like-minded Muslims, and I created in September of 2012, the Million Muslim March. Now, this was deliberate. I knew that choosing a name like the Million Muslim March and choosing to do it on 9/11 was controversial. It was deliberately done that way. There was a method to my madness for this, specifically to draw the attention of mainstream media. So as time went along, there were other organizations that got involved that liked the message and liked the idea. And then in January of 2013, we changed it to the Million American March Against Fear because it was more of an American issue than a Muslim issue at that point, particularly with the non-Muslim organizations that had signed on to join us. Around this time, we actually started to get the attention of U.S. World News, where they did an article which was actually very fair and balanced. I thought it was very well done about the events. He was looking to clarify the Million Muslim angle, and this would have been the first article with them would have been in February. So at this point, this is what got Fox News interested in our event. But of course, Fox News and a few other mainstream media continue to push the Million Muslim March because this was the agenda that they wished to push. Irregardless of evidence showing to the contrary. But they decided to take advantage of the weaker of the two head organizer, which would be MD. He is from Bangladesh. His English skills are not as prolific and as I am. So they decided to put him on Sean Hannity, which it was an embarrassment. So I began to develop an idea of being able to use this to my advantage to A, be able to put the truth out there, but then B, also be able to show that Fox News is a bully and that they have an agenda which is to push fear-mongering propaganda. So when I told my partner MD that there would be another contact after that, that he was to go on the show with me, so that I would do the majority of the talking, regardless of how much. Well, that lasted about 15 minutes on Jeannie Piero's show, where she cut my mic. In fact, in a fashion such as this, cut his mic. And then on the third attempt for Fox News to further push their agenda of fear-mongering, they contacted us again, and this time I told MD to say that he was sick and wasn't able to do it. Tell a little white lie that we would put Christopher Phillips, who was the director of MAD, March Against Drones, on instead. And I instructed Chris to not say that he wasn't Muslim unless either A, they brought it up, or B, it was close to the end of the show. And in fashion with Sean Hannity, he had Jasser on there. And close towards the end, Jasser had called Chris a bad Muslim after they had asked him a question if he would allow Hamas or Hezbollah to march, and which Chris responded, if they come peacefully to the march and they don't cause any harm, everybody's welcome. And so he was called a bad Muslim at that point, and Chris then said, I am not a Muslim. And the eyeballs bugged out, the jaws dropped, and subsequently the show ended quite abruptly at that point. So through this, using the same tools as the devil, if you would, this was what I was able to do. Now, how does my experience actually translate into everyday activism, since I don't suppose every one of you or every one of your events or your message is about Islam, and I highly doubt every single one of you have a Muslim in your back pocket at which to pull out when it's convenient for you. So the issue today is how to get mainstream media, where 77% of our Americans get their news from, how do we get them to cover our event? And the other problem is how to get them to cover it and get them to cover it objectively without twisting it to fit their agenda. Well, that second one is actually a conversation for another time. And if any of you guys actually figure out how to keep them from twisting it, please let me know, because I haven't figured that one out. I will discuss the problem with the target audience, how to get mainstream media interested in what you are promoting. So here's the problem. We're the most conditioned, programmed beings in the world that has ever known. Not only are our thoughts, attitudes continually being shaped and molded, our very awareness of the whole design seems like it is being subtly erased. The doors of our perceptions are carefully and precisely regulated. Who cares, right? It is an exhausting and endless task to keep explaining to people how most issues of conventional wisdom are scientifically implanted in the public consciousness by 1,000 media clips per day. In an effort to save time, I would like to provide just a little background on the handling of information in this country. Once the basic principles are illustrated about how our current system of media controls arouses historically, you might be more apt to question any given story in today's news. If everybody believes something, it's probably wrong. And we call that conventional wisdom. In America, conventional wisdom that has mass acceptance is usually contrived. Somebody paid for it. Examples: pharmaceutical restores health, vaccines brings immunity, the cure for cancer is just around the corner. When a child is sick, he needs immediate antibiotics. When a child has a fever, he needs Tylenol. Hospitals are safe and clean. America has the best health care in the world, and many, many more. But there are characteristics of a good propaganda. As the science of mass control evolved, PR firms developed further guidelines to effectively copy. And here are some gems. Dehumanize the attacked party by labeling and name-calling. Speak in glittering generalities using emotional positive words. When covering something up, don't use plain English. Stall for time and distract. Get endorsements from celebrities, churches, sports figures, and street people. Anyone who has no expertise in the subject at hand. The plain folks rule, and I'm using my quotation marks here, we billionaires are just like you. When minimizing outrage, don't say anything memorable. Point out the benefits of what just happened and avoid moral issues. Keep this list. Start watching for these techniques. They're not very hard to find. Okay? Look at today's paper, tonight's evening news. See what they're doing. These guys are really good. Now, here are some simple tips that we can use to draw attention from mainstream media and how to contact them and then manipulate them. Yes, I said manipulate them into promoting your event or message. You have to create a compelling package for the tips and information. If you were a blogger or a reporter looking for page views, maybe even being compensated solely on them, would you prefer to anchor a story around an official press release or a leaked memo? Probably the latter. Because readers and those that watch the news love leaks. Holiday talks about creating fake internal memos and disseminating them to unsuspecting members of the press, often providing ridiculous context like, oh my God, look what my boss just sent us. Concealing the true source of the information or repackaging it to make it look more earth-shattering can definitely draw attention from media types and readers who'd otherwise pass on it. But using faked memos can backfire, as 60 Minutes learned not too long ago. Be sensational. Sensationalism sells, period. It's almost always an asset. As long as there is a grain of truth at its core, there's no law against releasing or leaking, do my little quotes here, information that exaggerates the most jaw-dropping aspects of a situation, even if it's besides the point. Readers have limited time, so think about the subjects they most want to learn about, which unfortunately today is sex, drugs, revenge, money, the usual stuff. In this new form of yellow journalism, and this is according to our favorite research internet tool, Wikipedia, yellow journalism is a type of journalism that presents little or no legitimate, well-researched news and instead uses eye-catching headlines to sell more papers or airtime. So we have to make headlines that sell. Build on the sensational nature of your material with a suggested headline or a headline for the leaked release itself, and impossible to ignore. If it's appropriate for a person or a medium, not safe for work language, is absolutely okay here, and as long as you're cool with going on the record with it. If you're a regular consumer of online media, you notice that headlines from click-fueled publications, Business Insiders, BuzzFeed, the Gawker Media family, often have little to do with actual content of their stories. They're pretty successful, so they must be doing something right. You also have to exploit talented but financially insecure bloggers. It probably comes as no surprise that most bloggers live hand to mouth. There's no shortage of folks who post sensational content in their free time in hopes of making it big. Of course, few make an honest living out of it and in the here and now, and ever punch their meal ticket to the big time. In other words, the very people you rely on to build your buzz are in need of some online reputation building themselves. So give them a hand. Choose talented, promising, ambitious bloggers as recipients of exclusive leaks that could create momentum for their brand and yours. And then repeat as necessary. Right? It's a mutual benefit. You also want to give their promotional efforts a helping hand. If you're looking to prove your worth as a source, you may need to back up your sensational and exclusive claims with results, namely clicks and page views. Once your contact posts your story, promote it through your social media channels, tapping your friends and colleagues to do the same. Depending on your budget, you may even consider linking services like Outbrain, which drive traffic between high authority sites, stories, and those that could use a publicity boost. Now, how and why to contact the press? This is always important because you have to build a relationship with the reporters. And so one step is to use news pegs. If you want to pitch a story about your case to the news media, you need a news peg. Two of the most common news pegs are an event in the news that relates to your cause or your activism event you organize yourself. Tie in your pitch to an event in the news, local, national, or international. It's probably the most effective way to get news coverage. Reporters are often looking for ways to put an issue in context and advance it past what other news outlets are reporting. Another strategy that can be effective is staging an event. However, there are many things to keep in mind during the planning for this. Make sure the event is at a convenient time and place for reporters to show up. Ensure that you have a good turnout from your team and create strong visuals. And then you have the pitch. Many reporters prefer to receive pitches and emails, as they can read them when they have enough time to digest the ideas. I'm going to give you an example of an email you might send to a reporter when a peg is a story that's currently being covered in the news. You have your subject line, your story on tech and small business and another big problem that's looming. So your email would go, Bob, I saw that you wrote about how technology is impacting small businesses, and I really enjoyed it. So I thought you might be interested in another angle here, which is how international treaties will hurt both consumers and innovation. My group works on these issues, and we have an expert who would love to talk about what's going on right now. Secretive international negotiations that could create new global rules that hurt small business. For example, the business you mentioned could be forced to stop adding upgrades to customers' tablets and cell phones. There's more information here. Put your URL or your blog post or something else on your website, not your home page. So please let me know if you'd like to talk more. Now, in the signature line, you would include your complete contact information for yourself with the title, if you have one, and the name of your organization. Now, if you have decided to organize an event, you should post a media alert on the web that includes the basics, title of the action, where, when, what reporters will see, and contact information for organizers and some links to more information, e.g. blog post or other analysis, as well as to the organizer's homepage. Don't put up too many graphics or over-design it. Make it easy to read and understand. Here's a sample email. I'm going to give you another sample email on this. Your subject line should say, local event on dangerous international treaty that hurts consumers everywhere. You would say, hello, Bob. I saw that you covered how ill-conceived laws can hurt technological businesses. So I thought you'd like to know about our anti-TPP flash mob at 10 a.m. Saturday in front of this big corporation. Put their URL up. TPP stands for Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it's a sensitive multinational trade agreement that threatens to extend restrictive intellectual property laws across the globe and rewrite international rules on its enforcement. You could see pictures from our last flash mob here. Put your URL. If you need any more information, just let me know. Now, you might consider adding an RSVP to try to gauge interest, but you will find that response or lack thereof has little connectivity to reality either way. So who do you pitch it to? The best bet is to go local. Look at your websites for local and neighborhood radio, TV, newspaper, popular blogs. Send text for public service announcements to college radio stations, neighborhood newspapers, or your news weekly. If you're hosting an event, be sure to get the event listed in your local alternative weekly newspaper event section. Look for other event, local, or issue-specific listing websites and blogs to post a listing of your event too. Make sure to send your event alert at least 1 week in advance in order to hit their deadline. Many publications will reject anything after a certain date, so check the news organization website for calendar submission details. You have to identify the reporters who have covered issues that are similar to your own and find their email addresses. And keep that press list and take note of who gets back to you because you're likely to use them later. Always send an email to a general news tip email address that makes outlets look on a contact us webpage as well. You want to send an email to a small targeted group of reporters rather than sending your pitch to a long list of email addresses that aren't even vetted. Use BCC to send a group email to add a level of privacy and send personal emails to reporters that are more relevant. Keep it short. Reporters are deluged with sloppy email pitches. What happens when a reporter is interested? Well, if you have a reporter that responds to your email, answer any question promptly and clearly. If you leave reporters hanging, you're telling them you are unprofessional and your tip isn't worth following up on. Never imply that your email is an exclusive tip unless it is. If a reporter asks who else you pitched it to, be honest. I sent out similar email to a number of other reporters, but I've heard from you first. I think this story is very important and undercovered. Or you could also say, I sent an email out to a number of other reporters. This story is very important and undercovered. Let me give you an example that you would be particularly suited to writing about. Now, what happens when I get no response or a reporter has lost interest? If you emailed a reporter in response to news coverage and got no answer, don't resend the email. He or she may have read it or may not have, but you should feel free to try again when there's a new story to respond to. Now, if you emailed a pitch to an event that you've planned, you may follow up with a phone call or an email reminder about 24 hours before the start time of it for broadcast. Now, if you call, remember to ask whoever picks up the phone if they have time for your call, and then keep it short and to the point. Example, I emailed about an event tomorrow regarding the TPP treaty. About 20 people will be there in costume doing skits on how the treaty will hurt consumers. Do you need any more information? Now, for print or websites, follow up with a second, shorter email alert. Now, if you have reporters' emails, now if a reporter emails you back to say some nice version of thanks but not this time, make note of it. They are good reporters to email again when a new news peg comes up. Now, if a reporter emails you back to say, please don't contact me again, or gives you other instructions for pitching stories, follow the directions. If you don't, it's going to go straight into the trash.
Got 1 minute, Issa.
That's not nice. All right. So I got to fast forward here. As mentioned above, never leave reporters hanging. Always be organized in order to return phone calls and answer any questions promptly and clearly. If you don't, they'll never waste their time again. Now, what happens after they see your story? If you like it, or even if it's just average or not so bad, send up a follow-up thank you. If they twist the story, never get angry. Maybe send an email with the corrections in there if they got your name wrong, if they got the event wrong. But if they twist stories, don't get into an argument over opinions, okay? Because you don't want to burn bridges with the media, unless it's Fox News, all right? Now, getting media is extraordinarily hard, getting mainstream media. So be pleased with any progress that you make. And if you don't get any coverage from your first few attempts at pitching the media, learn from your mistakes and try again.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Issa Hodge.
No problem.
Appreciate that great presentation that you just did. And, of course, working with you as part of the Solutions Institute is wonderful, and really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thank you very much.